The building was a focus for activities by the local Seventh-day Adventist community. Religious plays, lectures and spiritual advice were recorded on film and videotape in the studios. Other rooms included a counselling centre and a workshop where first aid kits were assembled. Investigators believe the fire broke out in a clothes dryer at about 2 a.m, engulfing the small laundry and sweeping into the ceiling.
The walls and the ceilings were lined with a masonite type hardboard, which is fairly susceptible to fast fire spread, and the fire took off fairly quickly.
3 children were asleep in an annex at the rear of the building when the fire broke out. Their parents were in a nearby caravan and managed to rescue the family. Nevertheless, the loss of thousands of dollars of uninsured equipment is a major blow.
Well, this represents about 35 years of hard work.
It's unlikely that anything can be salvaged, but plans are already underway to start again. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
Conventionally built roads are expected to last for 20 years. This stretch should last for 50. Work in Metcalfe Street, Warners Bay is the first in the Hunter for this new technique. It's essentially a traditional mix of cement and aggregate, but with 50% less water. As the pavement is laid, it's immediately rolled and is ready for the traffic. Yesterday, a group of engineers from local councils inspected the job. Rollcrete works out about 6% more expensive to put down, but with the extended life, this may just be the road to the future.
Since his return from Great Britain, where the Wallabies won the World Rugby Cup, Nick Farr-Jones' services have been in constant demand, so the odd game of tennis was a nice diversion from fielding questions on rugby. The Australian captain found himself paired with fellow legal eagle Rupert Rosenbloom in the Roach Racker Resort Corporate Company Classic, and with deft touch and fabulous forehands, Farr-Jones found himself in the final. His opponents, however, know their way around the court. David Pert is the head coach at the resort, and John Walsh is an A-grader of some note. The match went to Pert and Walsh 4-6, 6-1, 6-4, with a rematch sure to be arranged. At Raymond Terrace, the Hunter Regional Gymnastics Championships were held over the weekend, with all disciplines being applied. In the boys, the winners were Joel Henderson, David Black, Adam Johnson and Mark Lulham, while in the girls from levels 1 to 6 were Angela Robinson, Jasmine Thor, Sally Hunter, Shay Douglas, Alexandra White, Alison Mead and Natasha Wattis. Organisers were extremely pleased with the standard of all competitors, which augurs well for the future development of gymnastics in the Hunter Valley region. Hoy returned from Hawaii especially for this event in the hope of gaining enough points to take the title in his final year as a junior. Although disappointed at missing out on winning the Pacific Dreams Pro Junior contest, Hoy was stoked to be named APSA champion.
It's a good to win it because it's my last year in the juniors, and it's just like a good title to win. I think it's just good. APSA champion, it's pretty good.
In the final, Wollongong's Chad Ryan was dominant from the outset, making the best of what was ordinary conditions. Ryan proved that his semi-final win over Chad Edser was no fluke as he powered through the choppy slop. His opponent, Mark Bannister, was never in the hunt as he fell off the back of a couple of early rides, and although he tried to pull off some big manoeuvres, it wasn't to be his day. Ryan continued his assault on the small waves and surfed his way to the winner's check and the title with a score of 134.5 points to that of North Narrabeen's Bannister's score of 123.3 points.
Although modifying one's diet is the first line of treatment for high cholesterol, some people resort to prescribed drugs. While they are free to patients, they are costly to the health system. Based on data collected in Newcastle, cardiologist Dr. Jonathan Silberberg has recommended a review of the guidelines for prescribing cholesterol-lowering drugs.
We're recommending that the first question that they should be asking when trying to decide who is eligible for a rebate for the cost of their cholesterol-lowering drugs should be not what is the cholesterol, but does this person have heart disease?
Dr. Silberberg says a strategy which targets the population already known to have heart disease is likely to be more effective than screening the bulk of the community.
The health dollar will go further, and there'll be more money for alternative services that are currently being gobbled up by mindless use of cholesterol-lowering drugs.
The Commonwealth Health Department is considering the proposal, and a decision is expected at the end of the year. Jane Anderson, NBN News. In a spirit of friendship, these students from two different cultures walked back through history today. Fort Scratchley was built in 1882 to defend Newcastle from the Russians, and it offered the students an excellent view of the city.
We're hoping that this will be the first of an annual exchange of pupils between the two schools, and we're also hoping that this will lead to a sister city arrangement between Sukagawa and Maitland.
Earlier this year, students from Maitland Grossman School visited these girls in Japan. Teachers expect the association to continue with priority for the exchange given to students who study Japanese. Jane Anderson, NBN News. While other health services in Newcastle are showing signs of strain, this multi-million-dollar facility has stood idle for more than 2 months. The United Mine Workers Federation had hoped to breathe life back into the hospital's corpse. But after weeks of negotiation with Health Administrator Dr. Tim Smythe, the miners have withdrawn their bid.
It just became pointless, and in fact we had to say enough was enough. If the government wasn't serious in reopening Wallsend Hospital, and especially with us involved, it was no point in my organisation continuing on with this project.
Ron Land says the government simply refused to contribute money to their scheme.
Wallsend Hospital now is the Minister's problem. It is not the United Mine Workers' problem. He closed it. It is up to the Minister and the Area Administrator now to come up with a suitable solution.
While the signs have faded with time, the Wallsend community and some trade unions remain committed to the cause.
It's just got to be brought back into service again.
I'm here because I believe this hospital should never have been shut.
If the decorations are any indication, this is one group that won't be closing over the festive season. Jane Anderson, NBN News. These students eagerly gather around artist Gary Dates, who has been commissioned to paint a mural in the school grounds. While he works, he passes on the history and culture of his Koori ancestors.
Teach me about what things that they catch and what things they had in the olden days.
20% of the students at the school are of Aboriginal descent, but the stories of the Dreamtime and survival in a harsh land are listened to by everyone.
From speaking to him and seeing the mural grow, they've learned more about Aboriginal culture than we could have taught them.
Gary has been invited to paint murals at other schools in the area. Jane Anderson, NBN News. Earlier this week, the Health Services Minister Ron Phillips made his first visit to the hunter since his appointment 5 months ago. Although he has closed Wallsend Hospital and axed other services in the region, his trip did not include a visit to the troops who remain at the battleground. The John Hunter, Royal and Curry were bypassed in favour of a brief visit to the hospital in the marginal Liberal seat of Maitland. Today, the Minister found time to officially open a women's health centre at the entrance, but he could not say when he will inspect the trouble spots in the Hunters Health Service.
Oh, well, as soon as well, for a start, many people up there have made it quite clear that that if I went up there that there'd be a significant demonstration, and I don't think that's helpful and resolves the issues of the hunter.
The Minister says problems such as the future of the Wallsend site and claims that the health system is under strain are initially being dealt with by his administrator, Dr Tim Smythe. Some Hunter Valley doctors concerned about health cuts have set up a fighting fund and appointed a public relations officer to voice their concerns.
No, I would suggest to them that they would do much better working with the Department of Health and Tim Smythe in that area to come to grips with the problem, to come up with a solution to the healthcare needs of the hunter.
It seems that if the Minister won't inspect the effects of the cuts on the hospitals in Newcastle, the wounded say they'll go to him. Ron Land from the United Mineworkers Federation says plans are underway for a demonstration outside Parliament House in Sydney. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
It was about 4 o'clock when thieves struck at this Beaumont Street store.
2 males entered the premises with knives, held up the lady attendant, while one male removed jewellery from the counters.
Was the lady hurt in any way?
No, she was not, just shaken up.
A neighbouring shopkeeper heard the woman's screams and locked the thieves in, forcing them to smash their way through a glass door. Passing motorists trailed the pair as they fled from the scene, eventually leading police to this Dumaric Street home. Shocked neighbours watched the capture.
When I come here, I see the man here with the police with the gun. I was like, what's going on?
Police will allege the man was carrying a knife and a balaclava. That man has now been taken to the John Hunter Hospital, suffering lacerations. A second man was arrested in nearby Vida Street. He is still being questioned at the Hamilton Police Station.
If he isn't responsible, we still have the area petitioned off, and we've got the dog squad to go in and hopefully suss out a offender.
Good evening, I'm Alison Peters with a news update. The opposition leader, Dr John Hewson, today launched the Coalition's economic package. He said the measures were pro-business because it's essential to create jobs and cut unemployment. But Prime Minister Hawke claims the GST package will divide the nation by helping the privileged and hurting middle and low income earners. Notorious criminal Raymond John Denning, who is expected to be released from jail early next week, will now face another 3 years behind bars.
'76 Squadron's flypast was appropriately right on time as the parade greeted Chief of Air Staff Air Marshal Ray Fennell. The Air Force's top-ranking officer was in Williamtown to present the Duke of Gloucester Cup to the squadron, an award established in 1947 to recognise excellence in the armed forces. For the men and women of 76 Squadron, the award is a special honour to an outfit that was only recently reformed after being disbanded as a cost-cutting measure. The squadron dates back to the Second World War, and retired veterans were there in force to share the occasion. When an invitation was extended to sit in the cockpit of modern-day aircraft, the former squadron members leapt at the chance. While they may not scramble into action quite as quickly these days, the old pilots have lost none of their enthusiasm.
Well, Harold, you got plenty of juice. Are you full of juice?
We'll be a little bit later on.
Agreed.
Take off any time.
And the veteran flyers raised a hearty cheer for a squadron they still call their own. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
The exhibition has been organised by the Art Gallery Foundation. All the money raised from the sale of the paintings will go toward buying acquisitions for the gallery. The paintings are priced between $260 and $3,000. Already around 10 have been sold. As this is the first time the Australian Watercolour Institute has shown such an exhibition in Newcastle, the gallery is reluctant to say how much money will be raised. Included in the exhibition are works by local artists Warwick Webb, Linda Rees and John Parkinson, with watercolours like this easily identifiable with Newcastle. Also being shown the gallery's latest acquisition, a Clifton Pugh work titled The Rites of Spring. Clifton Pugh died last year and this painting remains one of his best known works.
There were some fine ball skills on display at Broadmeadow as some of the state's best intellectually disabled athletes went through their paces. All were aiming for a spot in the New South Wales team. But in the Special Olympics, it's not necessarily the most talented who get the selectors' nod.
We're not looking for the 7 best basketballers playing for Special Olympics. We're looking to select a team that's representative of all Special Olympians.
This is sport at its purest, with the emphasis on fierce but friendly competition.
It is very genuine, keen athletic competition, but it's done in a spirit that has no malice to it. They really compete as hard as they can, but they're happy to see anyone win.
That spirit was obvious at the Police Citizens Club, where the novice gymnasts attacked their task with enthusiasm. They were rewarded with plenty of crowd support.
Organised by the Newcastle City Youth Service, the Sleep Out was aimed at raising public awareness about the costs of keeping a roof over the heads of young people who for many reasons find themselves out on the street. The Youth Service maintains 2 hostels in Carrington and Hamilton, capable of providing 14 beds for homeless youths, unmarried mothers and children. During winter, a minibus dispenses warm soup to street people around the city. Backed by the Uniting Church and partly funded by the government, the service still needs around $50,000 to get through another year. About 50 people gathered in the park last night, many calling for the government to increase funding.
The government never listens anyway, not to the people.
By ignoring it, they're not going to make it go away.
Well, I think coming down here we show them that we care and that's what counts.
Civic leaders, businesses and sporting organisations showed their support, but for those who sleep out each night, there'd be no such luxury as NBN's Big Dog there to tuck them in. As the shadows grew long, many prepared for a taste of what it would be like to curl up in a city park.
For us here, to be able to sit around and even sort of think about what it might be like to have nowhere to sleep and talk about it. There's a lot of people here who work in the welfare field as well as young people, and for them to be able to think about what it might be like, because they'll be working with these kids in the future.
Toukley detectives spent the morning interviewing witnesses to the shooting at the gang's clubhouse on the Pacific Highway just north of Doyleson. It was just before 2 o'clock this morning when a group of life and death motorcycle riders and their girlfriends returned home from seeing a band at a blacksmith's hotel. An argument erupted between two male members of the club, and the victim was shot at point-blank range with a .30 calibre rifle. Ambulance officers were the first to be called to a residence beside sheds used as the gang's clubhouse. They called police after finding the body of a man in his mid-30s who'd suffered a single fatal gunshot to the chest. The victim's name has not yet been released, but it's believed he'd been living in the house with a number of other club members since they moved into the area about 6 months ago. Police are now seeking a 32-year-old man, also a resident of the house, who they say can assist with their inquiries. The dead man's body was taken to Sydney for a post-mortem examination. A rifle found in the house is also undergoing scientific and ballistic tests.
Identical twins Jason and Anthony Wingett pulled off a rare double at the Australian Bodybuilding Championships. Anthony retained his super heavyweight title and Jason winning the heavyweight section. The 22-year-olds from Cardiff took the titles by storm and were clear-cut victors. By winning the national crowns, both Jason and Anthony have been selected to represent Australia at the International Bodybuilding Tournament in South Africa beginning Monday week. Two were the first Australians to compete in South Africa since bans on sporting contact has been lifted. For Anthony, it's a chance to continue his development.
I'm hoping for to do well overseas. That's my main goal this year, to do well overseas.
The twins aren't concerned at the tough job in staying in peak condition for the overseas contest, with weight the only problem for Jason.
I'll be able to keep in shape overseas, but I'm just hoping I can get down the next weight division like I did this year.
Teams from 10 regions are in Newcastle this week for the New South Wales Combined High Schools Cricket Carnival, with some of the best talent in the state on show. The last time the event was held in our town, a couple of notable lads took part, Mark and Steve Waugh, with mixed success I may add, Mark taking 5 for 2 in the final, while Steve made a duck. Riverina are the defending champions, but high hopes are held for the Hunter Valley team, which finished 6th in last year's carnival in Wollongong.
The Newcastle Rugby League was today trying to seal an embarrassing leak.
It's the policy of the Newcastle Rugby League that the result of the ballot is announced at the annual meeting, which is on tonight, and I have no power or authorisation to announce otherwise.
But it now appears certain that Knights chairman Max Fox won't have the numbers to maintain his place on the Newcastle Rugby League board. According to sources within the league, the likely makeup of the board will be Kevin Smith, David Turrell, David Brown, Alan Williams, Paul Slattery, Col Arnott and Phil Anthony. Those to miss out will be Max Fox and Kerry Clark, who are both also members of the Knights board, and Doug Gall. Fox and Clark can only maintain their positions within the Knights organisation if they are elected from the floor at the club's annual general meeting next month. Disharmony is also ripping through the Newcastle Harness Racing Club. President Dick McLean has announced his retirement and Secretary-Manager Gordon Lockman faces an uncertain future.
Well, there's a committee meeting tomorrow night and my future will be determined there. I certainly am not going to resign. I don't believe I should resign if I haven't done anything wrong.
And the apparent bounty on administrators hasn't been confined to rugby league and harness racing. The last month has seen the resignation of 3 leading figures on the Newcastle hockey scene and the dismissal of Northern New South Wales Soccer Federation Director Alan Lamb. Add to that the troubles experienced by the Newcastle Falcons during the year, and you get the picture of a city specialising in one vicious sport, infighting. Bruce Mackenzie, NBN News.